My sister is marrying my ex, and my parents forced me to attend to avoid questions. During my speech, I revealed the truth about the relationship. Now my sister is furious because my ex lost the inheritance they were relying on. Hi, I'm a 30-year-old female, and I have a bit of an issue. I don't quite know if I'm in the wrong here. I've read a lot of posts on here, and today is the first time I find myself turning to strangers on the internet for help. That's truly how desperate I am for an objective opinion. This involves my ex-boyfriend, my sister, and my parents. I know none of that sounds like it'll go someplace nice, and you would be right to assume that. Let me start by telling you about my previous relationship. When I first met my ex-boyfriend Jake, a 32-year-old male, I thought he was the love of my life. He was charming, funny, and supportive, or so I thought. We dated for 3 years, and for most of that time, I believed he was as invested in our relationship as I was. Looking back, though, there were red flags I ignored. He was secretive with his phone, and whenever I tried to talk to him about how weird that was, he'd say it was just work stuff. He'd also disappear for hours without explanation, and had a knack for making me feel guilty when I brought it up. I chalked it up to my insecurities because Jake always knew the right words to make me feel special whenever I doubted him. Things started unraveling during a family barbecue my parents hosted. My youngest sister Mia, a 27-year-old female, insisted I come because it had been a while since I attended a family gathering. She said it would mean a lot to her, so I reluctantly agreed. At one point, I realized Jake had been gone for a while. As I wandered through the house looking for him, I stumbled into the guest room, and there they were, Jake and Mia, together. It felt like the floor had fallen out from under me. My mind went blank as they scrambled to explain themselves. Jake stammered something about how he and Mia had connected and couldn't fight their feelings anymore. Mia said they didn't mean to hurt me but that they were soulmates. Soulmates, that's the word they used to justify months of deceit. I felt sick to my stomach. I stormed out and drove home in tears. It was honestly a miracle I didn't get into an accident because I could barely see through my tears. What hurt even more was my family's reaction when I told them. My parents brushed it off as young love. They said these things happen and that Jake and Mia just fell for each other. They acted like my heartbreak was a minor inconvenience compared to the blossoming love story between Jake and Mia. I went no contact with Jake and Mia and distanced myself from my family. Over the years, I built my life back up, piece by piece. I focused on my career, made new friends, and found happiness again. Then, out of nowhere, I received an invitation at Jake and Mia's wedding. It felt like a slap in the face. At first, I planned to skip it. There was no way I was going to sit there and watch them pledge their eternal love after what they did to me. But my parents had other ideas. They called, texted, and even showed up at my apartment unannounced, begging me to attend. They claimed my absence would cause gossip and make the family look bad. They said it was time to let go of the past and take the high road. At one point, my mom sat me down and said, "We're not asking you to forgive them, but we're asking you to be the bigger person. Family is more important than holding on to grudges." That got to me. I barely spoke to my parents, but I didn't want to cut them off entirely. I realized that moving on meant showing that I had healed. I didn't want people to think I was bitter when I really wasn't. I figured I could continue keeping my family at a distance, but that didn't mean I needed to make myself look weak. So, I told my parents I would go to Mia's wedding. That decision should have been the end of it, but then Mia started spamming me with texts, most of them gloating messages about how she had won or how Jake had always preferred her. At first, I ignored them. But then, a particular set of messages caught my attention. Likely drunk texting, Mia complained about how much pressure Jake's parents were putting on them to prove their worth if they wanted to inherit the family fortune. She bragged about how their wedding was going to seal the deal and ensure they stayed in Jake's parents' good graces. Suddenly, everything clicked. Jake and Mia weren't just building a life together, they were banking on his inheritance. Knowing this made me see their wedding in a different light. I wasn't just some bitter ex who had been betrayed. I was someone who had the power to expose their hypocrisy. But I didn't want to act out of spite. I wanted closure, not revenge. When I arrived at the wedding, part of me wanted to turn around and leave. The decorations were beautiful, and everyone looked so happy, but it all felt fake to me. I found my seat and kept my head down, planning to just get through the day. Then, my parents came up to me and asked me to give a speech. They said it would mean a lot to Mia if I showed my support in front of everyone. I wanted to refuse because it felt far too humiliating, but my mom wouldn't stop begging, and my dad started speaking to me in his irritated tone. That made me crumble pretty quickly. I knew they just wanted me to play along so the family's reputation would remain intact. I hated that they wanted this, knowing how humiliated I was by the very couple they wanted me to praise. Once again, I agreed out of obligation and guilt. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, I felt so angry and hurt. Just as I was about to give a generic and monotonous speech, a surprising sense of clarity washed over me. I started my speech by talking about love and how it can come from unexpected places. I mentioned the importance of honesty and trust in a relationship. Then, I pivoted to my own story. I told everyone how I had once been in a relationship with Jake, how I had believed he was my future, and how that future was stolen from me by someone I thought I could trust. I described the moment I found out about Jake and Mia and the pain it caused me. But I didn't stop there. I said that while their betrayal had broken me, it had also taught me valuable lessons about resilience and self-respect. I spoke directly to Jake's parents, thanking them for their kindness during the time I had been with Jake. I mentioned how much I appreciated their support back then and how I hoped they knew the full truth about the choices Jake and Mia had made. I never raised my voice or sounded angry. I kept my tone calm and measured, letting the truth speak for itself. When I finished, there was stunned silence in the room. Jake's parents looked furious and walked out almost immediately. I knew my words had struck a nerve. The rest of the wedding was a blur of chaos. Mia came up to me, screaming about how I had ruined her big day. Jake tried to pull her away, but she wouldn't stop yelling. My parents were mortified, but I didn't care. I had said what I needed to say, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure. Later, I found out from a mutual acquaintance that Jake's parents were considering disinheriting him after my speech. They said they couldn't support someone who had acted so dishonorably. Mia and Jake's perfect future might have just been gone in an instant, and they're blaming me for it. Mia's text came flooding in soon after, accusing me of ruining her life. She called me selfish, petty, and vindictive, but I didn't respond. I had no regrets about what I had done. The truth needed to come out, and if it caused problems for them, that was their own fault. But it's been a week, and Mia has not stopped messaging me about how horrible of a person I am. It's starting to get to me. Update: my sister is marrying my ex, and my parents forced me to attend to avoid questions. During my speech, I revealed the truth about the relationship. Now my sister is furious because my ex lost the inheritance they were relying on. Update 1. Hi guys, this post got so much more attention than I was expecting, but thank you to everyone who responded and gave me new perspectives to approach this situation from. I feel like I need to clarify why exactly I agreed to go to the wedding when I could have just avoided the whole thing and cut off contact with my family for even thinking about suggesting that to me. When I decided to go to the wedding, I did it because I wanted to show my family that I wasn't the bitter, vengeful person they seemed to think I was. I went because I wanted closure, and maybe on some level, I also wanted to prove to myself that I was stronger than the pain they had caused me. But deep down, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that wanted to make a statement. They had humiliated me, and I felt like no one had ever truly understood how much it hurt to be betrayed by both Jake and Mia, two people I had trusted the most. Looking back, I can admit that my speech was petty. It wasn't just about telling the truth, it was about making sure that Jake and Mia felt the sting of what they had done to me. But I don't feel sorry for it. When I was hurting, no one stood up for me. No one told Jake and Mia they were wrong. My family swept it under the rug, and Jake's parents, while kind to me during our relationship, never intervened to hold him accountable. So, no, I don't regret what I said. For once, I got to tell my side of the story. After the wedding, the fallout was immediate. Jake's parents were furious, and from what I've gathered through mutual acquaintances, they had always prided themselves on being a respectable family. When they heard how Jake and Mia's relationship started, they felt deeply embarrassed. Jake's mom was especially angry. She believed Jake had lied to her about the timeline of his relationship with Mia and me. They couldn't even consider the idea of leaving their inheritance to someone who, in their eyes, lacked morals and integrity. It wasn't just about my speech, it was about Jake's pattern of dishonesty and the disgrace he brought to their family name. So, they cut him and Mia off completely. I found out about Jake and Mia's financial troubles a few weeks later. One of our mutual friends reached out to me to share the gossip. Apparently, without Jake's parents' financial support, they were struggling to pay for the lavish lifestyle they'd been planning. The wedding alone had been a massive expense, and they'd been counting on the inheritance to cover it. Now, with no financial safety net, they were scrambling. Mia, in particular, was devastated. She'd always dreamed of living a cushy, comfortable life, and now she was stuck trying to figure out how to manage their mounting debts. Then came the messages from Mia. At first, they were angry and accusatory. She blamed me entirely for their situation, saying I had destroyed their future and turned Jake's parents against them. She told me I was selfish and vindictive, that I had ruined her happiness out of spite. But then her tone shifted, and she started demanding that I apologize publicly to Jake's parents. She wanted me to tell them I had exaggerated the situation and misrepresented their relationship in my speech. Mia even suggested I should beg Jake's parents to reconsider their decision to cut them off. Her demands were outrageous. She wanted me to humiliate myself again just to fix the situation she and Jake had created. It was almost laughable. After everything they'd done, after the betrayal and the pain they caused me, she had the audacity to ask me to clean up their mess. I refused outright, and I told her I wasn't responsible for their choices or their consequences. If Jake's parents had decided to cut them off, it wasn't because of my speech. It was because of their own actions. They had built their relationship on lies and betrayal, and now they were facing the fallout of those decisions. It wasn't my job to save them. I didn't respond to any more of Mia's messages after that. I blocked her and moved on. For years, I carried the weight of what they'd done to me, but now it felt like I had finally let it go. Their struggles were their own, and I had no interest in getting involved. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. When I reached out to Jake's parents, I wasn't sure what kind of response I would get. I wasn't even certain they would want to speak with me, considering how everything had unfolded. Surprisingly, they agreed to meet with me, and I was a mix of nervous and curious as I headed to their house. The conversation was eye-opening, to say the least. Jake's parents didn't hold back. They admitted that my speech had shocked them, but it wasn't the sole reason they decided to cut Jake and Mia off. According to them, they had already been questioning Jake's integrity for some time. My speech had simply confirmed suspicions they had about him and Mia's relationship. Jake's mom explained that they had noticed inconsistencies in the timeline Jake had given them about how he and Mia got together. They had always assumed he and I had amicably broken up before he began dating Mia. But after my speech, they realized there was significant overlap and that Jake had been dishonest with them about the circumstances. This lack of honesty was a major issue for them. Jake's dad chimed in, saying their decision to disinherit him wasn't made lightly. They believed their wealth should go to someone who upheld the family's values of respect and integrity. From their perspective, Jake and Mia had shown neither. It's not just about the speech, Jake's mom said firmly. It's about who they've proven themselves to be over time. I asked them why they hadn't confronted Jake about this before, and they admitted they had tried. But Jake had either brushed them off or downplayed the situation, insisting I was exaggerating. My speech had forced them to take a closer look at everything, and they didn't like what they saw. As I left their house, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was comforting to know that their decision wasn't entirely because of me. At the same time, it reaffirmed my belief that Jake and Mia were facing the consequences of their own actions. They couldn't blame me for their downfall when they had built their relationship on lies and betrayal. After that meeting, I decided it was time to fully move on. I wasn't going to let guilt eat away at me anymore. I had done nothing wrong by speaking my truth. If anything, it felt like a small piece of justice for everything I had been through. My parents, of course, were less understanding when I told them about the conversation. They accused me of stirring up even more drama by meeting with Jake's parents, but I didn't let their words affect me this time. I had finally found closure, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As for Jake and Mia, I haven't heard from them since blocking Mia's messages. I assume they're still trying to navigate their financial struggles, but honestly, it's not my concern anymore. Their lives are their responsibility, and I have no intention of getting involved again. To those of you who have been following this story, thank you for your support and perspective. This journey has been messy and painful, but it's also been a lesson in standing up for myself and letting go of the past. For now, I'm focusing on the things that truly matter, my own happiness and future. If anything changes, I'll be sure to update you all, but I'm hoping this is the last chapter in this saga. Here's to leaving the drama behind and finally finding peace. Update: my sister is marrying my ex, and my parents forced me to attend to avoid questions. During my speech, I revealed the truth about the relationship. Now my sister is furious because my ex lost the inheritance they were relying on. When I contacted them, Jake's parents were surprisingly open to talking to me. They said they had been upset with Jake long before the wedding but hadn't acted on it until my speech gave them clarity. They explained that Jake had lied to them about several things during our relationship. For example, he had exaggerated his career achievements and pretended he was financially stable when he was actually relying on them for support. They had been suspicious of his behavior for a while but didn't want to confront him without solid proof. My speech at the wedding was the tipping point. It confirmed what they had been suspecting all along, that Jake was dishonest and manipulative. They told me they had been particularly disappointed by how Jake and Mia's relationship started, as it showed a complete lack of integrity. Jake's mom said they felt betrayed because they had trusted him to be better than that. My speech didn't make them cut Jake off, it simply validated the concerns they already had. They made it clear that their decision was based on years of observing Jake's behavior, not just the revelations at the wedding. They also expressed gratitude for my honesty. They said they admired how I handled myself at the wedding, even though it must have been a difficult situation for me. Hearing that felt like a weight off my shoulders. For so long, I had felt like no one understood how much Jake and Mia's betrayal had hurt me. Knowing that Jake's parents saw the truth and appreciated my perspective made me feel validated in a way my own family never had. After that conversation, I felt more at peace. I realized that my speech wasn't the root cause of Jake and Mia's problems. Their struggles were the result of their own choices and actions, not mine. I've carried so much guilt over the years, but now I see that I've done nothing wrong by standing up for myself. If anything, I gave Jake's parents the clarity they needed to make a decision they'd been avoiding for far too long. My family, of course, didn't see it that way. They continue to push me to reconcile with Mia, but I've stopped letting their opinions affect me. I've spent enough time feeling guilty for things that aren't my fault. Jake and Mia's situation is theirs to deal with, and I have no intention of getting involved anymore. For once, I'm putting myself first. That's really it for this update. I've blocked my parents everywhere as well, and I think I'm going full no contact with them until… well, I don't know. I don't want to think about that either. Right now, I'm just going to focus on myself and moving forward. If anything happens, I'll be sure to come here and update you guys. Thank you for all the advice and love, you have no idea how much it means to me. Update 3. Once a cheater, always a cheater. That's a lesson I learned the hard way, and it's one I'll never forget. It's been 4 months since my last update, and for 3 of those months, things have been blissfully quiet. Mia and my parents stopped reaching out. They finally accepted that I wasn't going to play peacemaker or fix the mess Mia and Jake had made of their lives. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. I wasn't consumed by guilt or anger, and I was finally able to focus on myself and my happiness. But of course, nothing stays peaceful forever. At the start of this month, I received a text from an unknown number. It didn't take long to figure out it was Mia. She wasted no time informing me that she had annulled her marriage to Jake. She said she couldn't do it anymore and felt I deserved to know. I didn't respond. I'd already made it clear that I didn't want her in my life, and I wasn't about to reopen that door. But Mia wasn't done. Over the next few days, she sent a barrage of texts, gradually revealing what had led to her decision to leave Jake. According to Mia, the financial struggles they faced after Jake was cut off had taken a huge toll on their marriage. Jake, who had always relied on his parents' money, couldn't handle the pressure of living on a tight budget. Instead of working through their issues, he turned to cheating, and not just with one woman. Mia claimed she discovered he'd been unfaithful with multiple women, including 2 of her bridesmaids. Without me asking, Mia explained how she found out. She said she started noticing Jake's behavior becoming more erratic. He was staying out late, coming up with flimsy excuses for his absences, and being secretive with his phone. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was just the stress getting to him. But one night, she received a message from one of her bridesmaids, who confessed to having a brief fling with Jake. The bridesmaid claimed she hadn't known how to tell Mia but felt guilty about keeping it a secret. That confession opened the floodgates. Mia confronted Jake, who initially denied everything but eventually admitted to cheating, not just with a bridesmaid who came clean, but with another bridesmaid and a few other women as well. As I read Mia's texts, I felt so many things. Part of me felt vindicated. Jake had finally shown Mia his true colors, and she was experiencing the same betrayal I had endured years ago. It felt like karma had come full circle. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for her. I knew how devastating it was to be cheated on, to have the person you trusted most completely shatter your world. But that pity didn't last long. Mia might have been betrayed by Jake, but she had betrayed me first. She had made her choices, and now she was dealing with the consequences. Mia didn't stop at just explaining what happened. She started asking me for advice. She said she didn't know how to cope with the betrayal and wanted to know how I had managed to move on after Jake cheated on me. She kept trying to connect with me, saying we had both been hurt by the same man and that we should support each other. But what struck me most was what she didn't say. Not once in all her messages did she apologize for what she had done to me. She never acknowledged the pain she had caused me by betraying me with Jake. Instead, she acted like we were in the same boat, as if her suffering somehow erased the past. I didn't respond to any of her messages. I'd already given her more of my time and energy than she deserved. After a few days of nonstop texts, I blocked her again. I felt no guilt this time. If anything, I felt relieved that I didn't have to deal with her anymore, and relieved that karma had finally come around. Jake had shown Mia exactly who he was, and she had no one to blame but herself for ignoring all the red flags. Looking back, I have no regrets about how I handled the situation at the wedding or in the months that followed. Telling the truth wasn't petty, it was necessary. Jake and Mia's relationship was built on lies and betrayal, and it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. I've spent too much of my life trying to please people who don't deserve my kindness, and I'm done with that. For the first time in years, I'm focusing on myself and my happiness, and it feels amazing. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and let karma take care of the rest. So that's it for me. I'm finally going to move on and put all of this behind me. It's sad that I've lost my family through all of this, but I've been thinking about it, and I think it's time I go to therapy. I need to get all of this properly sorted out because I feel like there's a lot of emotions that I'm avoiding dealing with right now. Also, I'm seriously so grateful to every single one of you who replied and even privately messaged me to check in on me. You guys were the best, and honestly, you made this whole experience a lot easier to deal with.